Her single mother needed to make money, so she accepted an unusual job at a mansion. Little did she know she would have to clean the wounds of a millionaire. Love wasn't in the contract, and everyone was surprised. Before hearing this thrilling story, remember to subscribe to the channel. The shrill sound of the alarm clock broke the silence of the small apartment in the suburbs of New York. Emily opened her eyes slowly, feeling the weight of exhaustion still lingering in her body. With a sigh, she got up, knowing she couldn't afford the luxury of 5 more minutes in bed. Her daughter Olivia, just 6 years old, needed to be woken up and prepared for school. As she got ready in the tiny bathroom, Emily glanced at her reflection in the smudged mirror. At 28, her face already showed signs of constant worry, with small wrinkles forming around her eyes. Her once shiny brown hair now looked lifeless, tied up in a messy bun. "Mom, I'm ready!" Olivia's cheerful voice echoed down the hallway, drawing a tired smile from Emily. "I'm coming, sweetheart," she replied, giving one last look in the mirror before heading out. In the cramped kitchen, Emily quickly made herself some coffee and a small breakfast for Olivia. While the little girl ate, Emily mentally reviewed her schedule for the day. Today was her first day at a new job, and she couldn't afford to make any mistakes. "Olivia, remember that Aunt Mary will pick you up from school today, okay? Mum will be working late," Emily explained, gently stroking her daughter's blonde hair. "Okay, Mum. Are you going to work at that big house?" Olivia asked, her blue eyes sparkling with curiosity. Emily nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. It's a very important opportunity for us. If everything goes well, we might be able to move to a bigger apartment soon." After dropping Olivia off at school, Emily took the crowded subway to the most elegant neighborhood in New York. Her heart raced, a mix of anxiety and hope. The job posting she had responded to seemed too good to be true. A position as an elevator operator in a luxurious mansion, with the possibility of taking on additional household duties to supplement her income. When she got off at the station, Emily walked down the tree-lined streets, admiring the imposing facades of historic buildings. Finally, she arrived at the address and stopped, awestruck, in front of a majestic wrought iron gate. Behind it stood a mansion that looked like it had come straight out of a fairy tale, with its classic architecture and meticulously maintained gardens. With trembling hands, Emily rang the bell. Seconds later, a metallic voice responded through the intercom. "Harrington Residence, how may I assist you?" "Good morning, my name is Emily Thompson. I'm here for the elevator operator position," she replied, trying to sound confident. There was a brief pause before the gate began to slowly open. Emily took a deep breath and stepped inside, walking along the stone path that led to the main entrance. With each step, she felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. This job could change her life and Olivia's forever. At the mansion's door, a middle-aged woman dressed in an impeccable uniform waited for her. Her expression was serious but not hostile. "Miss Thompson, welcome. I'm Mrs. Thompson, the housekeeper. Please follow me. Mr. Harrington will see you in his office." Emily followed Mrs. Thompson through the opulent interior of the mansion, marveling at the marble floors, the artwork on the walls and the crystal chandeliers. Everything exuded wealth and sophistication, making Emily feel terribly out of place in her simple dress and worn-out shoes. They stopped in front of a carved oak door. Mrs. Thompson knocked softly and, after a brief moment, opened the door. "Mr. Harrington, Miss Thompson is here for the interview," she announced. Emily entered the office, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was spacious, with bookshelves covering the walls and a large window offering a stunning view of the gardens. Behind an imposing desk sat a man Emily presumed to be Mr. Harrington. At first glance, he was the embodiment of power and elegance. He wore an impeccably tailored suit, his graying hair was perfectly combed, and his piercing green eyes seemed to assess every detail of Emily. Yet, there was something more in his demeanor, an almost imperceptible tension, as if he were uncomfortable in his own skin. "Miss Thompson, please have a seat," he said, his voice deep and controlled. Emily obeyed, trying not to show her nervousness. Mr. Harrington began asking questions about her experience, her skills, and her availability. Emily answered as best she could, emphasizing her dedication and willingness to learn. "I see you have a daughter," Mr. Harrington observed, glancing at Emily's resume. I hope that won't interfere with your work. Not at all, sir, Emily quickly replied. I have arrangements for her care. I am fully committed to this job. Mr. Harrington studied her for a moment, his intense gaze making Emily feel as though she were under a microscope. Finally, he nodded. Very well, Miss Thompson, I am willing to give you a chance. You will start tomorrow. Mrs. Thompson will show you your duties and the house rules. Emily could hardly believe her ears. She had gotten the job. Thank you so much, Mr. Harrington. I promise you won't regret it. As Emily stood up to leave, she noticed something strange. Mr. Harrington seemed hesitant to extend his hand for a handshake, and when he finally did, the grip was brief and tense. Emily couldn't help but notice that he was wearing gloves, despite the warmth of the day. Following Mrs. Thompson out of the office, Emily felt a mix of relief and excitement. This was the beginning of a new chapter in her life, an opportunity to provide a better future for Olivia. However, as she walked through the halls of the mansion learning about her future responsibilities, she couldn't help but think about the enigmatic Mr. Harrington. There was something about him, a vulnerability carefully hidden behind his imposing facade that intrigued Emily. She had a feeling there was much more to discover about her new employer and the secrets the Harrington mansion held. By the end of the day, exhausted but hopeful, Emily left the mansion with the promise to return the following morning. As she walked back to the subway station, her heart felt light for the first time in a long while. She could hardly wait to tell Olivia about her new job and the possibilities that lay ahead for them. Yet a small voice in the back of her mind reminded her that nothing is as simple as it seems. The world of the rich and powerful was entirely foreign to her, and Emily knew she would have to navigate these uncharted waters carefully. As the subway took her back to her modest apartment, Emily couldn't imagine how her life was about to change. Fate had placed her and Olivia in the path of Mr. Harrington, and the consequences of that encounter would be deeper and more transformative than any of them could have predicted. The sun had barely risen when Emily woke up the next morning. Her first official day at the Harrington mansion was about to begin, and she was determined to make a good impression. Careful not to wake Olivia, who was sleeping soundly in the small bed beside her, Emily quietly got ready. She put on the uniform provided by the mansion, a simple yet elegant grey dress with a spotless white apron. Looking at herself in the mirror, Emily barely recognized herself. The uniform gave her an air of dignity she hadn't felt in a long time. "Mom?" Olivia's sleepy voice interrupted her thoughts. Emily turned, smiling at her daughter. "Good morning, my love. Go back to sleep, it's still early." Olivia sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes. "You look beautiful, Mom, like a princess." Emily chuckled softly, sitting on the edge of the bed to hug her daughter. "Thank you, sweetheart. But remember, I'm just an employee there. I'll work hard to give us a better life." After leaving, Olivia with the neighbor who would watch her until school time, Emily hurried to catch the subway. During the ride, her stomach churned with nerves. She couldn't afford to make mistakes. This job was her golden opportunity. Arriving at the Harrington mansion, Emily was greeted by Mrs. Thompson, who quickly ushered her inside. "Good morning, Miss Thompson. I hope you're ready for a full day. Let's start with your duties in the elevator." Emily nodded, following the housekeeper to the mansion's main elevator. It was a work of art in itself, with carved wooden panels and polished brass details. Mrs. Thompson meticulously explained the operation of the elevator and the expectations for Emily's service. "Remember, Miss Thompson, discretion is key in this house. You will hear and see many things, but you are expected to keep everything absolutely confidential." Emily readily agreed. "You can count on me, Mrs. Thompson. I'll be the very definition of discretion." The first hours passed in a blur of instructions, introductions to the staff, and familiarization with the household routine. Emily worked hard to absorb every detail, determined not to make any mistakes. It was mid-morning when she had her first significant encounter with Mr. Harrington since the interview. The elevator stopped on the main floor, and the doors opened to reveal the imposing owner of the mansion. "Good morning, Mr. Harrington." Emily greeted him respectfully, trying to ignore the sudden wave of nervousness that washed over her. He stepped into the elevator, briefly acknowledging her with a nod. "Good morning, Miss Thompson. To the 3rd floor, please." Emily immediately noticed that just like the day before, Mr. Harrington was wearing gloves despite the growing warmth. His impeccable suit covered every inch of his skin except his face, which looked tense and slightly pale under the elevator light. As they ascended, Emily couldn't help but notice the faint scent of some kind of medicinal ointment in the air. It was subtle but undeniably present. She wondered if Mr. Harrington was ill, but she knew it wasn't her place to ask questions. The silence in the elevator was palpable, broken only by the soft hum of the machine. Emily kept her eyes fixed on the buttons, aware of the occasional glance Mr. Harrington cast in her direction. When the doors opened on the 3rd floor, Mr. Harrington hesitated for a moment before stepping out. "Miss Thompson," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, "I hope you're settling into the job well." Emily looked at him, surprised by the sudden show of interest. "Yes, sir, everyone has been very kind and helpful." He nodded, seeming satisfied. "Good. If you need anything, don't hesitate to speak with Mrs. Thompson." With that, he stepped out of the elevator, leaving Emily with a strange feeling that there was more to that brief interaction than met the eye. The rest of the morning passed without incident, with Emily becoming increasingly familiar with her duties. During the staff lunch, she had the opportunity to get to know her co-workers better. "So what do you think of our mysterious boss?" asked Giselle, one of the maids, with a mischievous smile. Emily hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "He seems reserved." "Ha!" exclaimed Pierre, the gardener. "That's a polite way of saying he's an eccentric recluse. No one here really knows him, you know." "Pierre!" Mrs. Thompson, who had just entered the kitchen, scolded sharply. "We do not tolerate gossip about Mr. Harrington in this house. Everyone, back to work." Emily noticed the warning look the housekeeper gave her and understood the message. Whatever the mystery surrounding Mr. Harrington, it was none of her business. In the afternoon, as Emily cleaned the inside of the elevator between trips, she couldn't help but reflect on the enigma that was her new employer. Why did he keep so much to himself? What could he be hiding? Her thoughts were interrupted when the elevator doors opened again, revealing a stunning woman. Tall, blonde, and dressed in clothes that surely cost more than Emily earned in a year, she stepped into the elevator as if she owned the place. "Lobby," the woman ordered, barely glancing at Emily. "Yes, ma'am," Emily replied politely, pressing the button. As they descended, the woman spoke on the phone, her voice filled with irritation. "No, you don't understand. I need to see Alexander today. It's urgent. That stubborn fool can't keep hiding from the world forever." Emily pretended not to hear, but her heart raced. She was almost certain the woman was talking about Mr. Harrington. Alexander must be his first name. When the doors opened in the lobby, the woman hurried out, still on the phone. Emily was left behind, her mind spinning with the implications of what she had just heard. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity, with Emily dividing her time between the elevator and other household tasks that Mrs. Thompson assigned her. She tried hard to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting back to Mr. Harrington or Alexander and the mysteries surrounding him. At the end of her shift, exhausted but satisfied with her performance, Emily was preparing to leave when Mrs. Thompson called her. "Miss Thompson, Mr. Harrington would like to see you in his office before you go." Emily's heart leapt. Had she done something wrong? Or perhaps he had noticed that she overheard the conversation in the elevator. With hesitant steps, she followed. "Mrs. Thompson to Mr. Harrington's office." The housekeeper gently knocked on the door, and after hearing a muffled "come in," opened it for Emily. Mr. Harrington was seated behind his desk, the late afternoon light casting dramatic shadows across the room. He gestured for Emily to sit down. "Miss Thompson," he began, his voice calm but with a hint of something Emily couldn't quite identify. Nervousness, anticipation. "I wanted to congratulate you on your first day. Mrs. Thompson informed me that you performed very well." Emily let out a sigh of relief. "Thank you, Mr. Harrington. I'm very happy to hear that." He studied her for a moment, his intense green eyes under the dim light. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Thompson. Something that goes beyond your current responsibilities." Emily felt her heart race again. What could it be? She nodded, encouraging him to continue. I understand you have skills in sewing, is that correct? Surprised by the unexpected question, Emily confirmed. Yes, sir. I used to make all of my daughter's dresses and... He interrupted her with a gesture. Excellent. You see, Miss Thompson, I have specific needs when it comes to clothing. I would like to hire you for an additional position as my personal seamstress. Emily blinked, stunned. This was nothing like what she had expected. I am honored, Mr. Harrington, but I'm not sure if my skills are up to... I will be the judge of that, he interrupted again, his voice firm but not unkind. The salary, of course, will be substantially higher, and you will have access to high-quality materials and equipment. Emily's mind was spinning. It was an incredible opportunity, a chance to truly change her life and Olivia's. But there was something more going on here. She could feel it. There's one more thing, Mr. Harrington continued, his voice lowering slightly. This job will require absolute discretion and a certain resilience. Emily furrowed her brow, confused. Resilience, sir. He stood up abruptly, turning toward the window. For a moment, Emily thought she saw a flicker of pain cross his face. Miss Thompson, there are aspects of this job that may be unpleasant, but I can assure you, you will be well compensated. He turned to face her. Do you accept? Emily hesitated. There was clearly more to this offer than met the eye, but the prospect of a higher salary, of being able to provide a better life for Olivia. It was too tempting to refuse. Yes, Mr. Harrington, she finally replied. I accept. He nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. Excellent. We'll begin tomorrow. Good evening, Miss Thompson. As she left the office, Emily couldn't help but wonder what exactly she had gotten herself into. The mystery surrounding Mr. Harrington only deepened, and she had a feeling her life was about to change in ways she could barely imagine. With her head full of questions and her heart torn between excitement and apprehension, Emily left the Harrington mansion, eager to share the news with Olivia, but also aware that there were secrets she would have to keep. Whatever the future held, she knew nothing would ever be the same. The next day dawned with a mix of anxiety and anticipation for Emily. She had spent the previous evening explaining to Olivia, in simplified terms, about her new additional role at the Harrington mansion. The girl was thrilled at the prospect of her mother making pretty clothes for rich people, as she innocently put it. Arriving at the mansion earlier than usual, Emily was greeted by Mrs. Thompson, who led her to a new area of the house, a spacious room on the top floor, transformed into a breathtaking sewing atelier. Mr. Harrington has prepared this space for your new work, Miss Thompson, Mrs. Thompson explained, her tone a mix of admiration and a hint of curiosity. Here you'll find all the necessary materials and equipment. Emily was speechless as she took in the state-of-the-art sewing machines, rolls of luxurious fabrics, and an array of tools meticulously arranged. It was a dream come true for any seamstress. It's incredible, Emily murmured, reverently touching a piece of pure silk. Mrs. Thompson nodded, a slight smile on her lips. Mr. Harrington spares no expense when it comes to his special needs. She paused, her face turning serious. Miss Thompson, I must remind you once again of the importance of discretion in this work. Whatever you see or hear here must remain in absolute secrecy. Emily swallowed hard, feeling the weight of responsibility. I understand perfectly, Mrs. Thompson. You can trust me. After a few additional instructions, Mrs. Thompson left Emily alone to familiarize herself with her new workspace. She had barely had time to explore when a soft knock at the door announced the arrival of Mr. Harrington. He entered, as impeccably dressed as always, but Emily immediately noticed the tension in his posture, the slight tremor in his gloved hands. Good morning, Mr. Harrington, Emily greeted him, trying to keep her voice steady. Miss Thompson, he replied with a nod. His eyes scanned the studio before settling on her. I hope you find everything to your liking. It's more than I could have dreamed, sir. I appreciate the opportunity. He made a dismissive gesture. There's no need for thanks. Your discretion and skill are what interest me. He paused, seeming to gather courage. Now, let's get to the point. I need you to make some Adjustments. And my clothes. Emily nodded, picking up a notepad. Of course, sir. What kind of adjustments? Mr. Harrington hesitated, his gaze briefly shifting away. I need extra lining in certain areas, soft hypoallergenic fabrics, and... He paused, his voice lowering. Strategic openings for... medical treatment. Emily frowned, confused. Medical treatment, sir. It was then that Mr. Harrington did. Something Emily did not expect. Slowly, almost painfully, he began to remove his jacket. Emily watched, stunned, as he unbuttoned his shirt, revealing a cotton undershirt beneath. Miss Thompson, he said, his voice trembling, what I'm about to show you, very few people have seen. I ask that you maintain your composure. With a quick movement, he removed the undershirt, and Emily couldn't suppress a gasp of surprise. Mr. Harrington's skin, from his neck down as far as she could see, was a web of scars, red patches and wounds in various stages of healing. Some areas looked inflamed, others flaking. I suffer from a rare and chronic dermatological condition, he explained, his voice now a hoarse whisper. It's challenging, to say the least. Emily quickly recovered from her initial shock, her heart filling with compassion. I understand. Mr. Harrington, I'll do my best to create clothes that are comfortable and practical for your treatment. He looked at her, surprise and relief evident in his eyes. You're not repulsed? Not at all, sir, Emily replied sincerely. This doesn't change who you are. Now let's work on making your clothes more comfortable, shall we? In the moments that followed, Emily worked meticulously, taking measurements and notes, always with the utmost respect and professionalism. She noticed how Mr. Harrington gradually relaxed, his posture becoming less tense as he realized she wasn't judging him. As she worked, Emily couldn't help but notice the details of his condition. Some areas seemed particularly painful, and she found herself thinking of ways to adapt the clothes to minimize friction and irritation. Sir Harrington, she said softly, if I may suggest, we could use a special silk for the inner lining. It is extremely soft and has natural anti-inflammatory properties. He looked at her, a mix of surprise and curiosity on his face. You seem to know quite a bit about this, Miss Thompson. Emily smiled faintly. My daughter has sensitive skin. I've learned a lot by researching ways to make her clothes more comfortable. For a moment, something resembling emotion crossed Mr. Harrington's face. Your dedication to your daughter is admirable. The rest of the session unfolded with Emily making suggestions and Mr. Harrington considering them. As they worked together, Emily felt a connection forming, a mutual understanding that went beyond employer and employee. When they finished, Mr. Harrington dressed again, his face a mask of control, but his eyes betrayed a vulnerability Emily had never seen before. Thank you, Miss Thompson, he said quietly. Your kindness has not gone unnoticed. Emily nodded, feeling that something profound had shifted between them. It's my job, Mr. Harrington, and I'm honored by your trust. He studied her for a moment before turning to leave. At the door he paused. Miss Thompson, Emily, I hope we can work well together. With that he left, leaving Emily alone with her swirling thoughts. She sat in one of the atelier chairs, her mind replaying everything that had happened. The mystery of Mr. Harrington had deepened, but in a way Emily hadn't expected. Behind the facade of power and wealth was a man struggling with a painful and isolating condition, and for some reason he had chosen to trust her. As she began sketching designs for Mr. Harrington's new clothes, Emily couldn't help but think about how her life had changed in just a few days. From a single mother struggling to survive, she now found herself at the center of a world of wealth, secrets, and hidden vulnerabilities. The sound of the mansion's clock chiming brought her back to reality. She still had her regular job to do. With a sigh, Emily put away her sketches and prepared to return to her duties as an elevator operator. The day dawned gray over New York, as if the sky reflected the anxiety Emily felt as she prepared for her second day at the Harrington mansion. While getting Olivia ready for school, her mind kept circling around Mr. Harrington's enigmatic proposal. "Mom, are you okay?" asked Olivia, noticing Emily's distraction. Emily forced a smile. Of course, sweetheart. I'm just thinking about work. Today will be a special day. Are you going to do something different? Olivia's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Emily hesitated, remembering Mr. Harrington's request. For discretion. Yes, I will help Mr. Harrington with some special clothes. Like a fairy godmother. Olivia laughed, delighted by the idea. Something like that, Emily replied, kissing her daughter's forehead. Now let's go, we don't want you to be late. After dropping Olivia off at school, Emily headed to the mansion, her heart pounding in her chest. Upon arrival, she was greeted, not by Mrs. Thompson as she had expected, but by Mr. Harrington himself. "Good morning, Miss Thompson," he greeted her, his voice controlled, but Emily noticed an underlying tension. "Please, follow me." Emily followed him through the mansion's hallways up to the third floor. They stopped in front of a door she hadn't noticed before. Mr. Harrington hesitated for a moment before opening it. "This will be your workspace," he explained, leading her inside. Emily was speechless. The room was a dream sewing studio, equipped with state-of-the-art machines, high-quality mannequins, and shelves filled with the finest fabrics she had ever seen. "Mr. Harrington, this is incredible," she whispered, hardly believing her eyes. He nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "I'm glad you approve. Now, Miss Thompson, before we begin, there's something I need to show you." The tone of his voice made Emily turn to him, noticing the seriousness in his eyes. Slowly, Mr. Harrington began to remove his suit jacket. Emily watched, confused, until he started unbuttoning his shirt. "Mr. Harrington, I don't think—" she began, but her words died in her throat as he finally removed his shirt. Mr. Harrington's torso was covered in an intricate web of scars and injuries. Some appeared old, others more recent, forming a disturbing mosaic on his skin. Emily swallowed, hard, struggling to maintain a neutral expression. "This," he said, his voice low and controlled, "is why I need your help, Miss Thompson. My condition requires special care and tailored clothing. Can I count on your discretion and professionalism?" Emily met his eyes, seeing for the first time the vulnerability behind his powerful facade. "Yes, Mr. Harrington, you can count on me." He nodded, seeming relieved. "Good. Now let me explain exactly what I need." The next few hours passed in a blur of measurements, sketches, and technical discussions. Emily discovered that, in addition to creating clothes to conceal Mr. Harrington's injuries, she would also need to develop pieces that wouldn't irritate his sensitive skin and would allow for the application of medications. As she worked, Emily couldn't help but notice Mr. Harrington's discomfort. He seemed constantly tense, as if expecting her to react with disgust at any moment. "Mr. Harrington," she said softly, while measuring the length of his arm, "may I ask a personal question?" He hesitated before nodding. "How long have you been dealing with this condition?" His eyes met hers, surprised by the question. "Since adolescence," he replied after a moment. "It started as something small, but it progressed over the years." Emily nodded, continuing her work. "It must have been difficult." "You have no idea," he murmured, almost to himself. Silence fell between them, broken only by the soft sound of the measuring tape sliding over the fabric. Emily worked carefully, aware of the trust Mr. Harrington was placing in her. "You know," she finally said, "my daughter Olivia was born with a birthmark on her face. It's nothing compared to what you're facing, but the other children used to tease her." Mr. Harrington looked at her with renewed interest. "And how does she handle it?" Emily smiled softly. "She learned to see beauty in herself, despite what others might think. It's a lesson we all could learn, don't you think?" For a moment, Emily feared she had crossed some invisible boundary, but then, to her surprise, a small smile appeared on Mr. Harrington's lips. "Your daughter seems to be a remarkable young woman, Miss Thompson, just like her mother." The comment caught Emily off guard, and she felt her cheeks flush slightly. "Thank you, Mr. Harrington." The rest of the morning passed quickly, with Emily immersed in her work. She found that, despite the unusual circumstances, she was genuinely excited about the challenge of creating clothes that were both functional and elegant for Mr. Harrington. When it was time for lunch, Mr. Harrington insisted that Emily join him in his private dining room. At first she hesitated, conscious of the difference in status between them, but eventually accepted. The meal was served on fine china, and Emily felt out of place, trying to remember the etiquette rules she had learned long ago. Mr. Harrington, however, seemed not to notice her discomfort, engaging her in surprisingly casual conversation. "Tell me more about your daughter, Miss Thompson," he asked, his tone genuinely interested. Emily smiled, always happy to talk about Olivia. "She's the light of my life. Smart, curious. Sometimes I think she's wiser than I am." "Children often are," Mr. Harrington commented, a touch of melancholy in his voice. "They see the world in a way that we adults often forget." Emily watched him closely, noticing a distant look in his eyes. "Do you have children, Mr. Harrington?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. "No," he replied after a moment. "My condition made that possibility complicated." Silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken emotions. Emily felt a wave of compassion for this man, who despite all his wealth and power seemed deeply lonely. "You know," she said softly, "Olivia always says that family is who we choose. Maybe there's still time for you to find yours." Mr. Harrington stared at her for a long moment, a myriad of emotions flickering in his eyes. "Perhaps you're right, Miss Thompson," he finally replied, his voice barely above a whisper. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Emily alternated between her duties in the elevator and her new work in the studio, losing track of time as she dedicated herself to creating the first prototypes for Mr. Harrington. When she finally finished her shift, she was exhausted but strangely satisfied. As she prepared to leave, she was surprised once again by Mr. Harrington. "Miss Thompson," he called, handing her an envelope. "A bonus for your excellent work today." Emily opened the envelope, her eyes widening at the generous amount. "Mr. Harrington, this is deserved," he gently interrupted. "You've exceeded my expectations in every way." Moved, Emily nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Harrington. This means a lot to me and Olivia." As she headed home, Emily reflected on the surreal day she had had. The mystery surrounding Mr. Harrington had deepened, but at the same time she felt she had caught a glimpse of the man behind the mask of coldness and power. Arriving home, Emily found Olivia waiting eagerly for her. "Mom, how was your fairy godmother day?" the girl asked, bouncing with excitement. Emily laughed, hugging her daughter. "It was magical in a way," she replied, thinking about how to explain her day without revealing the secrets she had promised to keep. As she prepared dinner for Olivia, Emily couldn't help but think of Mr. Harrington, alone in his grand mansion. She wondered if he had someone to share his meals with, someone to talk to about his day. "Mom," Olivia's voice brought her back to reality. "You look happy." Emily smiled at her daughter. "I am, sweetheart. I think we're at the beginning of something very special." That night, after putting Olivia to bed, Emily sat at the kitchen table with a sketch pad. Her fingers flew across the paper, sketching ideas for clothes that would not only hide Mr. Harrington's scars, but make him feel confident and powerful. As she worked, Emily couldn't help but feel that she was on the brink of something bigger than just a new job. Somehow, she knew that her life and Olivia's were about to change in ways she could hardly imagine. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity for Emily. Her days were divided between her regular duties as an elevator operator and the increasingly absorbing work in the studio. As she became more familiar with Mr. Harrington's specific needs, Emily found herself immersed in a world of special fabrics, innovative designs, and unique challenges. One morning, as she worked on a new vest that would allow Mr. Harrington to discreetly apply his medications, Emily was surprised by an unexpected visit. "Miss Thompson," Mrs. Thompson's voice sounded from the door. "We have a situation that requires your immediate attention." Emily looked up from her work, noticing the tension on the housekeeper's face. "What happened?" "Mr. Harrington is unwell. He specifically asked for you." Emily's heart raced. In all the weeks she had worked at the mansion, she had never been summoned like this. "Of course, I'll go right away." Following Mrs. Thompson through the halls of the mansion, Emily couldn't help but notice the curious glances from the other staff. Clearly, her unique position had not gone unnoticed. They arrived at a part of the mansion Emily had never visited before, Mr. Harrington's private quarters. Mrs. Thompson stopped in front of an imposing door. "Miss Thompson," she said in a low voice, "whatever you see or hear here will remain absolutely confidential," Emily finished, understanding the gravity of the situation. Mrs. Thompson nodded and opened the door. The room was spacious and elegantly decorated, but Emily barely noticed the details. Her attention was immediately drawn to the figure sitting on the edge of the bed. Mr. Harrington was hunched over, wearing only pajama pants, his exposed back revealing the full extent of his condition. "Mr. Harrington," Emily called softly, approaching carefully. He turned slowly and Emily had to suppress a gasp. His usually composed face was twisted in pain, and new lesions were visible on his chest and arms. "Miss Thompson," he said, his voice hoarse, "I apologize for this." Emily shook her head, immediately switching to professional mode. "There's no need to apologize, sir. How can I help?" In the following minutes, Emily worked in silence, helping Mr. Harrington apply his medications and dress in clothes that wouldn't further irritate his inflamed skin. She noticed how he struggled to maintain his composure, even in her presence. "Mr. Harrington," she said gently, as she adjusted the sleeve of his shirt, "you don't have to hide your pain from me. I'm here to help, not to judge." He looked at her, surprise evident in his eyes. For a moment, his mask of control slipped, and Emily saw the true extent of his suffering. "It's difficult," he finally admitted. "I've spent so long hiding this from everyone." Emily nodded understandingly. "Sometimes sharing our pain can make it more bearable." A silence fell between them, filled only by the soft sound of fabric as Emily finished adjusting Mr. Harrington's clothes. When she was done, she stepped back, observing him carefully. "How do you feel now?" He moved experimentally, testing the comfort of the clothes. "Better," he said, a touch of surprise in his voice. "Much better, actually." Emily smiled, feeling a wave of satisfaction. "I'm glad to hear that." Mr. Harrington studied her for a moment, an unreadable expression on his face. "Miss Thompson, Emily, thank you, not just for the clothes, but for your understanding." The use of her first name caught her off guard, but Emily felt that something had shifted between them. An invisible barrier had fallen. "You're welcome, Cut Alexander," she replied, testing the waters by using his first name. A small smile touched his lips, the first Emily had seen since she entered the room. In the days that followed, Emily noticed a subtle change in the dynamics of the mansion. Mr. Harrington, Alexander as she now called him in private, seemed more relaxed in her presence. Their work sessions in the studio were punctuated by conversations that went beyond mere discussions about fabrics and designs. One afternoon, as Emily adjusted the collar of a new shirt, Alexander casually asked, "How is your daughter, Emily?" "Olivia, isn't it?" Emily smiled, always happy to talk about her daughter. "She's doing well, excited about the upcoming school year." Alexander nodded, seeming genuinely interested. "Does she know about your work here?" Emily hesitated. "She knows I make special clothes for you, but she doesn't know the details, of course." "Of course," he murmured. After a moment of silence, he continued, "It must be difficult, balancing all of this with motherhood." Emily shrugged lightly. "Sometimes. But Olivia is my motivation for everything I do." Alexander watched her for a moment, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You are a remarkable woman, Emily. Olivia is lucky to have you as her mother." The unexpected compliment made Emily blush slightly. "Thank you, Alexander. That means a lot." As the days turned into weeks, Emily found herself increasingly involved in Alexander Harrington's life. She wasn't just his seamstress and occasional caretaker, but had also become a kind of confidant. Alexander began to share more about his life, his struggles with illness, and the isolation it had caused. One day, as they worked together in the studio, Alexander asked a question that took Emily by surprise. "Emily, have you ever thought about bringing Olivia here to see the mansion?" Emily stopped what she was doing, looking at him in astonishment. "I wasn't sure if that would be appropriate." Alexander smiled softly. "Consider it an official invitation, maybe on a weekend. We could give her a little tour, perhaps have a picnic in the gardens. Emily's heart warmed at the idea. Olivia would love that. She's been so curious about my work here. Then it's settled, Alexander said, seeming oddly excited at the prospect. The following Saturday, Emily brought Olivia to the Harrington mansion. The girl was in awe of everything, her wide eyes trying to take in every detail of the grand place. To Emily's surprise, Alexander joined them for the tour, wearing one of her latest creations, an elegant suit that cleverly concealed his injuries without sacrificing style. "So you're the famous Olivia," Alexander said, bending down to meet the girl at eye level. "Your mother talks about you a lot." Olivia, usually shy around strangers, smiled openly. "Mom said you make magic clothes for you." Alexander chuckled softly, casting an amused glance at Emily. "Magic, huh? Well, your mother certainly has a special talent." The day passed surprisingly pleasantly. Alexander showed Olivia the gardens, shared stories about the mansion, and even let her try the elevator on her own, under Emily's watchful supervision, of course. During the picnic in the gardens, Emily watched in astonishment as Alexander interacted with Olivia. He was patient, kind, and genuinely interested in the girl's animated stories. For a moment, Emily caught a glimpse of the man Alexander could have been or still could be, without the weight of his condition. As the day came to an end and it was time to leave, Olivia impulsively hugged Alexander. "Thank you for the amazing day, Mr. Harrington." Emily saw the surprise in Alexander's eyes, followed by an emotion she couldn't quite name. He returned the hug awkwardly but sincerely. "It was my pleasure, Olivia. You're welcome here any time you want." As they said their goodbyes, Emily noticed a change in Alexander. There was a lightness in his eyes that she had never seen before. "Thank you for this, Emily," he said softly. "It was refreshing." Emily smiled, feeling a wave of affection for this complex man. "Thank you for having us, Alexander. It meant a lot to Olivia, and to me." That night, as she tucked Olivia into bed, Emily reflected on how her life had changed in the past few weeks. What had started as a job to support her daughter had turned into something much deeper. "Mom," Olivia said sleepily, "Mr. Harrington seems sad sometimes. Can we do something to cheer him up?" Emily kissed her daughter's forehead, moved by her empathy. "Maybe we can, sweetheart, maybe we can." As she turned off the lights in Olivia's room, Emily couldn't help but think about the future. Something was changing in the Harrington mansion, something that went beyond fabrics and designs. A connection was forming, woven with threads of understanding, compassion, and perhaps something deeper. With a sigh, Emily prepared for bed, her mind filled with ideas for new designs and, more importantly, ways to bring more light into Alexander Harrington's life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time in a long while, Emily felt truly hopeful about the future. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity for Emily. Her mornings started early, getting Olivia ready for school, before rushing to the Harrington mansion. There, she divided her time between her duties as an elevator operator and her work in the atelier, creating unique pieces for Mr. Harrington. With each passing day, Emily felt she was delving deeper into the enigmatic world of Alexander Harrington. Her creations weren't just clothes, but carefully woven armor, designed to protect not only his body but also his dignity. One particularly busy afternoon, Emily was so absorbed in her work that she didn't notice Mr. Harrington's presence until he spoke. "Impressive, Miss Thompson," he said, making Emily jump in surprise. "Mr. Harrington, I'm sorry I didn't hear you come in," she replied, blushing slightly. He approached, examining the fabric Emily was working on. It was a special silk treated to be extremely soft and hypoallergenic. "You have a genuine gift," he commented, his fingers lightly brushing the fabric. "I never imagined I could feel comfortable again." Emily felt a wave of pride and something more, an emotion she couldn't quite name. "Thank you, Mr. Harrington. I'm happy to be able to help." He studied her for a moment, his intense green eyes. "Emily," he said, using her first name for the first time, "would you care to join me for some tea?" Surprised by the unexpected invitation, Emily nodded. "Of course, it would be a pleasure." They made their way to a small room adjacent to Mr. Harrington's office. It was a cozy space, with bookshelves lining the walls and a stunning view of the mansion's gardens. As Mr. Harrington poured the tea, Emily couldn't help but notice how much more relaxed he seemed here, away from the prying eyes of the outside world. "Miss Thompson," he began, sitting across from her, "I hope you don't mind my curiosity, but how did you end up as a single mother?" Emily was caught off guard by the personal question. She hesitated for a moment before responding. "It was complicated," she began. "Olivia's father was a charming man when we first met, but when I got pregnant, he changed. He said he wasn't ready to be a father and just disappeared." Mr. Harrington frowned. "That must have been devastating for you." Emily nodded. "It was, but Olivia, she gave me strength. Every smile of hers, every little milestone, it all made it worth it." "You're a remarkable woman, Emily," said Mr. Harrington, his voice soft. "Facing all of that alone—" "I'm not alone," Emily smiled. "I have Olivia. And now—" She hesitated, not wanting to presume too much. "Well, I have this wonderful job." Mr. Harrington watched her over his teacup, an unreadable expression on his face. "Yes, you do," he said finally. "And I must say, your presence here has been refreshing." Emily felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you, Mr. Harrington. That means a lot to me." They continued talking, the atmosphere growing more relaxed as time passed. Emily discovered that behind the cold and professional facade, Mr. Harrington was a cultured and intelligent man, with a subtle sense of humor that surprised her. As they spoke, Emily couldn't help but notice how his eyes occasionally drifted to the windows, watching the world outside with a mix of longing and apprehension. "Mr. Harrington," she said gently, "when was the last time you left the mansion?" He tensed for a moment, his eyes turning to her. "It's been some time," he admitted. "My condition makes public appearances challenging." Emily felt a wave of compassion for him. "I understand, but perhaps with the clothes we're creating—" "Perhaps," he interrupted, his voice soft but firm. "But let's not get ahead of ourselves, Miss Thompson." "Thompson?" Emily nodded, respecting his boundaries, but an idea was beginning to form in her mind. In the days that followed, Emily worked with renewed determination. In addition to everyday clothing, she began developing a special project, an outfit that would not only protect Mr. Harrington, but also give him the confidence to face the outside world again. One afternoon, while working on this secret project, Emily was interrupted by a commotion coming from the hallway. Curious, she stepped out of the studio to investigate. In the hallway, she found Mrs. Thompson engaged in a heated argument with an elegant woman Emily vaguely recognized, the same woman she had seen in the elevator weeks ago. "Madam, I've already told you that Mr. Harrington is unavailable," Mrs. Thompson said, her voice firm but polite. "This is ridiculous," the woman exclaimed. "I'm Isabella Durant, his business partner. He can't just avoid me." Emily watched the scene, feeling uneasy. She was about to discreetly retreat when Mr. Harrington appeared, drawn by the noise. "Isabella," he said, his voice cold. "What is the meaning of this?" The woman turned, her eyes widening as she saw Mr. Harrington. "Alexander, finally, why have you been avoiding me? We have important business to discuss and you—" She stopped abruptly, her eyes fixing on something behind Mr. Harrington. Emily followed her gaze and realized with a sinking heart that one of the sleeves of Mr. Harrington's shirt had risen, slightly revealing a portion of his scars. Isabella's face twisted into an expression of shock and poorly concealed disgust. "Alexander, what happened to you?" Mr. Harrington recoiled as if he had been slapped, quickly pulling the sleeve down. His normally composed face was a mask of shame and anger. Before anyone could react, Emily stepped forward. "Mr. Harrington," she said, keeping her voice calm, "do you remember that fabric we wanted to test? It's ready in the studio. Perhaps we could do that now." For a moment, Mr. Harrington looked confused. Then, understanding Emily's cue, he nodded. "Yes, of course. Isabella, if you'll excuse me." Without waiting for a response, he turned and followed Emily back to the studio. leaving a stunned Isabella behind. Once inside the studio, Mr. Harrington collapsed into a chair, his composure crumbling. "She saw," he murmured, his voice breaking. After all these years of hiding, Emily knelt beside him, hesitating before gently placing a hand on his arm. "Mr. Harrington Alexander," she said softly, "there's nothing wrong with you. Your scars are part of who you are, not something to be ashamed of." He looked at her, his eyes filled with a vulnerability that broke Emily's heart. "How can you say that? Did you see how she looked at me?" "I did," Emily replied firmly, "and what I saw was ignorance and shallowness. Your scars tell a story of strength and survival. They don't define you, but they are part of you. And you, Alexander Harrington, are an extraordinary man." For a long moment, Alexander stared at her, a myriad of emotions crossing his face. Then, to Emily's surprise, he took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you, Emily," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "You are truly extraordinary." Emily felt her heart race at the intensity of his gaze and the warmth of his hand in hers. She knew she was crossing a line, that the relationship between them was shifting in a way she barely understood. But in that moment, all that mattered was the man in front of her, finally allowing himself to be truly seen. The sound of footsteps in the hallway brought them back to reality. Emily quickly stood up, returning to her work table as Alexander composed himself. Mrs. Thompson entered the studio, looking concerned. "Mr. Harrington, Mrs. Durant has left. She said she'll return another day to discuss business." Alexander nodded, his mask of control slipping back into place. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Please ensure my schedule is clear the next time she comes." When the housekeeper left, Alexander turned to Emily. "I suppose we should continue our work, Miss Thompson," he said, his voice formal once more but with a touch of warmth that hadn't been there before. Emily nodded, picking up her sketches, but as she explained her latest ideas, she couldn't help but think about the moment they had shared. Something had shifted between them, a deeper connection forming, and as they worked side by side, Emily felt a renewed determination. She would help Alexander Harrington not only to dress but to see himself as she saw him, a strong, resilient man worthy of love and acceptance. The days following the incident with Isabella Durant brought a subtle but noticeable change in the dynamic between Emily and Alexander. There was a new intimacy in their interactions, a mutual understanding that went beyond words. Emily threw herself into her work with renewed determination. The secret project she had started, a special suit that would allow Alexander to face the outside world with confidence, consumed much of her free time. She spent late nights awake, sketching designs and experimenting with new materials, determined to create something truly extraordinary. One morning, as she worked in the studio, Emily was surprised by an unexpected visit from Alexander. "Good morning, Emily," he said, his voice softer than usual. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Emily smiled, quickly covering her secret sketches. "Not at all, Mr. Harrington. How can I help you?" Alexander hesitated for a moment, seeming almost nervous. "Actually, I came to extend an invitation. Would you join me for dinner tonight? There's something I'd like to discuss with you." Emily's heart raced. "Dinner with Alexander?" "I would be honored," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "But Olivia—" "I've already thought of that," Alexander interrupted gently. "If you agree, Mrs. Thompson can look after Olivia here at the mansion while we dine. I'm sure your daughter would love to explore a bit more." Emily was momentarily speechless, touched by Alexander's thoughtfulness. "That would be wonderful. Thank you. I'm sure Olivia will be delighted." Alexander smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his eyes in a way Emily rarely saw. "Excellent. We'll meet at 7 p.m. then." After Alexander left, Emily found herself unable to focus on her work. Her mind raced with possibilities. What did Alexander want to discuss, and why a formal dinner? The rest of the day passed in a blur of anticipation. When Emily finally picked up Olivia from school and explained the plans for the evening, the girl was radiant with excitement. "Are we going back to the big house, Mom? Can I play in the garden again?" Emily laughed, hugging her daughter. "Yes, sweetheart." And Mrs. Thompson will take care of you while I have dinner with Mr. Harrington. Olivia paused, looking at her mother with wisdom beyond her years. Mom, you like Mr. Harrington, don't you? The question caught Emily off guard. Yes. Sweetheart, he's a good man and a good boss. Olivia shook her head, unconvinced. No, Mom, you like him like in the fairy tales. Your eyes sparkle when you talk about him. Emily felt her cheeks flush. Was it that obvious? Olivia, it's complicated. Mr. Harrington and I, we're just friends. For now, Olivia murmured with a mischievous smile. When they arrived at the mansion, Mrs. Thompson greeted Olivia with a warm smile, promising a fun-filled evening. Emily, in turn, was led to a guest room to prepare. To her surprise, a beautiful emerald green dress was laid out on the bed. Next, to it was a handwritten note. Emily, I hope you don't find me presumptuous, but I thought you might like to wear this tonight. It's a small thank you for everything you've done for me. Alexander. With her heart racing, Emily tried on the dress. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made just for her. Looking at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She seemed confident, elegant, beautiful. At exactly 7 p.m., Emily descended the stairs, feeling like Cinderella going to the ball. Alexander was waiting at the bottom, dressed in an impeccable suit, one of Emily's creations, she noted with pride. When their eyes met, time seemed to stand still. Alexander looked at her with an intensity that made Emily's heart skip a beat. Emily, he said softly, you look absolutely stunning. Thank you, she replied, feeling herself blush. The dress is beautiful. The dress only enhances your natural beauty, Alexander said, offering her his arm. Shall we? He led her to a private dining room, illuminated by candles and with a spectacular view of the mansion's gardens. The table was set for two with fine china and silverware. As they dined, the conversation flowed easily between them. Emily was surprised by how comfortable she felt in Alexander's presence, outside the context of their usual work. It was only after dessert that Alexander finally addressed the reason for his invitation. Emily, he began, his voice serious, there's something I need to tell you, something very few people know. Emily felt her heart race. What is it, Alexander? He took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. My condition, it's not just a skin disease. It's a rare genetic disorder, potentially fatal if not treated properly. Emily felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. Fatal, she whispered. Alexander nodded gravely. I've been battling this for years. The best doctors, experimental treatments, but recently I discovered a possible cure. Emily's eyes widened. That's wonderful, Alexander. But why are you telling me this? He reached across the table, gently taking her hand. Because I trust you, Emily. More than I've trusted anyone in a long time. And because I need your help. My help? How? Alexander explained that the treatment was highly experimental and risky. He would need to travel to a specialized clinic abroad, staying there for several weeks. And he wanted Emily to accompany him. Not just for your skills with clothing, he explained, but for your company, your strength. You make me feel normal, human. Emily was speechless, overwhelmed by the trust Alexander was placing in her. Alexander, I'm honored, but Olivia can come with us, of course, Alexander said quickly. I'll arrange everything, private tutors, accommodations, and she won't miss out on her education. Emily's head was spinning. It was a huge proposal, one that would completely change their lives. But looking into Alexander's eyes, seeing the vulnerability and hope there, she knew what her answer would be. Yes, she said softly. Yes, Alexander, we'll go with you. The relief and gratitude on Alexander's face were palpable. He squeezed her hand, his eyes shining with emotion. Thank you, Emily. You have no idea how much this means to me. At that moment, sitting in the candlelight with Alexander's hand in hers, Emily felt she was on the brink of something extraordinary. The future, which had once seemed so uncertain, now stretched before her, full of possibilities and promises. But as her heart filled with hope, A small voice in the back of her mind reminded her of the risks. This journey would not be easy, and the outcome was far from guaranteed. Emily knew the challenges they would face would test not only her skills as a seamstress, but also the strength of her character and the depth of her feelings for Alexander. The weeks following the dinner with Alexander were a whirlwind of activity for Emily. Preparing for an international trip, especially one with so many implications, proved to be a monumental task. Emily divided her time between finishing her projects at the mansion, organizing the necessary documents for herself and Olivia, and trying to explain the situation to her daughter in a way that a 6-year-old could understand. "So we're traveling with Mr. Harrington to help him get better?" Olivia asked one night as Emily tucked her into bed. Emily smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. "Yes, sweetheart. Mr. Harrington needs special medical treatment, and he asked us to accompany him." Olivia was thoughtful for a moment. "Will he be okay, Mom?" The question caught Emily off guard. She hesitated, not wanting to lie to her daughter, but also not wanting to scare her. "We hope so, love. The doctors will do their best." "I like him," Olivia said sleepily. "He makes you smile." Emily felt her cheeks flush, grateful that the darkness of the room hid her reaction. "Sleep well, my love," she whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. At the mansion, the pace of work intensified. Emily spent hours in the studio, creating an entire wardrobe for Alexander that would meet his medical needs during the trip and treatment. It was during one of these work sessions that Alexander surprised her with an unexpected visit. "Emily," he said, entering the studio with a serious expression, "there's something I need to show you." Intrigued, Emily followed him to his private office. There, Alexander opened a hidden safe behind a painting and pulled out a thick folder. "These are all the details of my treatment," he explained, placing the folder on the table. "Medical protocols, risks, possible side effects. I want you to know exactly what you're getting into." Emily felt the weight of the trust Alexander was placing in her. Carefully, she opened the folder and began to read. As she absorbed the information, her heart tightened. The treatment was even riskier than she had imagined. "Alexander," she said softly, looking at him, "are you sure about this? The risks are substantial, I know," he finished, his voice firm. "But Emily, this may be my only chance at a normal life, at a future." He stopped abruptly, looking away. Emily noticed a subtle blush on his cheeks, something she had never seen before. "A future," she gently encouraged. Alexander took a deep breath before turning back to her. "A future where I can live, not just exist, where I can love without fear." Emily's heart raced at the intensity of his gaze. There was something unspoken hanging between them, a silent promise of possibilities. "I understand," she finally said, "and I'll be by your side no matter what happens." Alexander smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his eyes. "Thank you, Emily. Your strength gives me courage." In the days that followed, Emily devoted herself even more to her work. In addition to the clothes for Alexander, she began creating pieces for herself and Olivia, suitable for the climate and occasions they would face during the trip. One afternoon, as she was finishing a coat for Alexander, Emily was surprised by Mrs. Thompson. "Miss Thompson," the housekeeper said, her voice softer than usual. "May I have a word?" Emily nodded, curious about what the always formal Mrs. Thompson might want to discuss. "I want to thank you," Mrs. Thompson began, seeming slightly uncomfortable, "for what you're doing for Mr. Harrington. I've worked for him for many years, and I've never seen him so alive." Emily was touched by the sincerity in the housekeeper's words. "I just want to help him, Mrs. Thompson. He deserves a chance to be happy." Mrs. Thompson studied her for a moment before continuing. "Miss Thompson, Emily, I must warn you, Mr. Harrington's world is complicated. There are people who may not approve of your closeness to him." Emily frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "Just be careful," Mrs. Thompson said softly, "and know that you have an ally in me if you need it." With those cryptic words, the housekeeper left, leaving Emily with more questions than answers. As the day of departure approached, the atmosphere in the mansion grew increasingly tense. Emily could feel Alexander's anxiety rising, reflected in small gestures and worried glances. On the eve of the trip, Alexander invited Emily and Olivia to a special dinner. The table was beautifully set, and the chef had prepared Olivia's favorite dishes. During the meal, Emily watched with tenderness as Alexander interacted with Olivia, patiently answering her endless questions about the trip and the country they would visit. "Mr. Harrington," Olivia said suddenly, her voice serious, "do you promise it will be okay? I don't want Mommy to be sad." Silence fell over the table. Emily felt her throat tighten with emotion as Alexander looked at Olivia with a mix of surprise and affection. "Olivia," he said softly, leaning down to her eye level, "I promise I'll do everything in my power to be okay. And I also promise that, no matter what happens, I'll always take care of you and your mother." Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes at the sincerity in Alexander's words. Olivia, satisfied with the answer, smiled and went back to eating her dessert. Later, after Olivia was taken to bed by Mrs. Thompson, Emily and Alexander were left alone on the balcony watching the stars. "Thank you," Emily said softly, "for what you said to Olivia. It meant a lot to her, and to me." Alexander turned to her, his eyes shining in the soft glow of the garden lanterns. "I meant every word, Emily. You too have changed my life in ways I never thought possible." He took a step toward her, closing the distance between them. Emily felt her heart race, aware of the electricity in the air. "Emily," Alexander said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I know what I'm about to say may be inappropriate given out and work arrangement, but before we embark on this journey, I need you to know—" He paused, gathering courage. Emily hardly dared to breathe, her entire body tense with anticipation. "I've fallen in love with you," Alexander finally said, his words heavy with emotion. "Your kindness, your strength, your acceptance, you've made me believe I can be more than my illness, that I can be loved." Emily felt as if the world had stopped. All the emotions she had tried to suppress over the past weeks came rushing to the surface at once. "Alexander," she whispered, tears in her eyes, "I love you too, more than I ever thought possible." For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the unspoken words floating between them. Then slowly Alexander leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a soft, tender kiss. When they pulled apart, Emily saw a light in Alexander's eyes that she had never seen before. Hope, love, and the promise of a future together. "Tomorrow," Alexander said, holding her hands, "we begin a new journey. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that with you by my side I can face anything." Emily smiled, her heart overflowing with love and hope. "Together," she said, "we'll face whatever comes." The day of departure dawned grey and cold, as if the very sky of New York was reluctant to let them go. Emily woke early, her stomach a knot of anxiety and anticipation. As she packed the last of their bags, she couldn't help but think of the night before, of the kiss she and Alexander had shared, of the words of love exchanged under the stars. Olivia, excited about the prospect of the trip, bounced around the small apartment, asking endless questions about the plane, the country they were going to, and what they would do there. "Mommy, are we going to live in Mr. Harrington's big house forever when we come back?" Olivia asked, her eyes shining with excitement. Emily hesitated, caught off guard by the question. I don't know, sweetheart. We'll see what happens." "So, okay." When they arrived at the Harrington mansion, they were greeted by a scene of frantic activity. Staff members rushed back and forth, carrying luggage and documents. At the center of it all was Alexander, giving final instructions to Mrs. Thompson. When he saw Emily and Olivia, Alexander's face lit up with a smile. "Good morning, my dears," he said, approaching them. "Are you ready for our big adventure?" Olivia ran to hug him, all her initial shyness forgotten. "Yes, Mr. Harrington. We're going to fly in the clouds." Alexander laughed, a sound Emily realized she had been hearing more often in recent days. "That's right, little one, and when we get there, we'll have so many new things to see and learn." Emily watched the interaction with a full heart. Seeing Alexander with Olivia, so at ease and affectionate, made something inside her melt. The trip to the airport was made in a luxurious limousine, with Olivia pressing her nose against the window, fascinated by the city passing by. Emily and Alexander sat side by side, their hands discreetly intertwined. "Are you nervous?" Alexander asked softly. Emily nodded. "A little." "It's a big change for us." "I know," he replied, gently squeezing her hand. "But we're in this together. Whatever awaits us, we'll face it united." At the private airport, a gleaming jet awaited them. Olivia's jaw dropped as she saw the shiny plane. "Is it all ours, Mummy?" she asked, incredulous. Emily laughed. "Yes, sweetheart. Mr. Harrington has been very generous." As they boarded, Emily noticed the tension in Alexander's shoulders. She knew that, despite his calm appearance, he was deeply anxious about what lay ahead. Once in the air, with Olivia asleep in one of the comfortable seats, Emily and Alexander finally had a moment alone. "How are you really feeling?" Emily asked, studying his face. Alexander sighed, letting his mask of confidence slip for a moment. "Terrified," he admitted. "Hopeful but terrified. What if it doesn't work, Emily? What if I've given you and Olivia false hope?" Emily took his hand, gently stroking it. "Alexander, whatever happens, we're in this together. We're not with you because of a potential cure. We're with you because we love you, exactly as you are." Alexander's eyes filled with unshed tears. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Yes, you do," Emily replied firmly. "You deserve all the love and happiness in the world." They spent the rest of the flight talking quietly, making plans for the future, dreaming of possibilities. Emily showed Alexander some of her new designs, including the special project she had been working on in secret, a sleek, protective suit that would allow Alexander to face the outside world with confidence, regardless of the treatment's outcome. When the plane finally landed, the sun was setting in a vibrant sky. Emily gently woke Olivia, and together they stepped off into a new country, a new life. A car was waiting to take them to the specialized clinic where Alexander would be treated. During the ride, Emily watched the landscape pass by the window, a fascinating mix of modern and old, so different from New York. The clinic, when they arrived, was a grand, futuristic building surrounded by well-kept gardens. A team of doctors and nurses greeted them at the entrance. "Mr. Harrington," a middle-aged man in a white coat, stepped forward. "Welcome. I'm Dr. Nakamura. We're honored to have you with us." Alexander shook the doctor's hand, his posture tense. "Thank you, doctor. This is Emily Thompson and her daughter Olivia. They are my family." Emily's heart leapt at hearing Alexander refer to them that way. Dr. Nakamura smiled warmly at them. "Welcome, we have accommodations prepared for you in the complex adjacent to the clinic." As they were led to their rooms, Emily couldn't help but notice the curious glances they received from the clinic staff. She wondered how many of them knew who Alexander was and what they thought of his presence there. The room assigned to Emily and Olivia was spacious and comfortable, with a stunning view of the clinic's gardens. Alexander would stay in a specialized medical room equipped for his specific needs. After settling in, they gathered for a light dinner. Olivia, exhausted from the trip, fell asleep shortly after the meal. Emily tucked her into bed and returned to find Alexander on the balcony, gazing thoughtfully at the starry sky. "Tomorrow," he said softly as Emily joined him, "we begin the preliminary tests." Emily linked her arm with his, resting her head on his shoulder. "I'll be with you every step of the way." Alexander turned to her, his eyes shining in the soft moonlight. "Emily," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I want you to know, no matter what happens in the coming days, weeks, you and Olivia are the best thing that's ever happened to me. You've given me a reason to fight, to believe in a better future." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. "Oh, Alexander," she whispered, "you've given us so much too. A new life, new possibilities, and love. So much love." They kissed softly, the kiss filled with promises and hopes for the future. When they pulled apart, Alexander gently held Emily's face between his hands. "We'll face this together," he said, "day by day." Emily nodded, feeling a wave of determination wash over her. "Together," she agreed, "always." As they prepared to sleep, each in their own room, Emily couldn't help but feel a mix of fear and hope. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of a challenging journey, but she knew that with love and courage, they could face anything. Across the hallway, Alexander lay down on his medical bed, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to dream of a future with Emily and Olivia, a future where his condition wouldn't define who he was. The days following their arrival at the clinic were a mix of hope and anxiety for Emily, Alexander, and Olivia. Morning started early, with Alexander undergoing a series of tests and exams, while Emily divided her time between supporting him and caring for Olivia. A routine soon settled in. Emily would wake at sunrise, prepare Olivia for her lessons with the tutor Alexander had hired, and then head to the medical wing to meet Alexander. There she would help him with his specially designed clothes and accompany him during procedures, always holding his hand during the toughest moments. One morning, as they waited for the results of a particularly important test, Emily noticed that Alexander was more tense than usual. "What's worrying you?" she asked softly, sitting beside him on the hospital bed. Alexander hesitated before answering. What if this doesn't work, Emily? What if I've brought you and Olivia here for nothing?" Emily took his hand, intertwining their fingers. "Alexander, look at me," she said firmly. When his eyes met hers, she continued, "We didn't come here just for the possibility of a cure. We came because we love you and want to be by your side, no matter what happens." Alexander's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Yes, you do," Emily replied, leaning in to kiss him gently. "You deserve all the love and happiness in the world." At that moment, Dr. Nakamura entered the room carrying a thick folder. His expression was serious but not grim. "Mr. Harrington, Miss Thompson," he greeted. "We have the preliminary test results." Emily felt Alexander squeeze her hand tighter. "And so, doctor?" Alexander asked, his voice tense. Dr. Nakamura opened the folder, his eyes scanning the documents. "The results are promising," he said finally. "Your condition is complex, Mr. Harrington, but we believe the experimental treatment we've developed could have a significant impact." Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. Beside her, Alexander let out a shaky breath. "However," the doctor continued, "I must emphasize that the treatment won't be easy. It will be a long and, at times, painful process. There will be difficult days ahead." Alexander nodded, his expression determined. "I understand, doctor. I'm prepared to face whatever is necessary." Emily squeezed his hand in silent support. "We'll be with you every step of the way," she said. Dr. Nakamura smiled gently. "It's good to see you have such a strong support system, Mr. Harrington. That will make a big difference during the treatment." After discussing the details of the treatment plan, the doctor left them alone to process the information. Emily watched Alexander carefully, noticing the mix of emotions on his face. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. Alexander turned to her, his eyes shining with a mix of hope and fear. "I'm thinking that for the first time in years I might actually have a future with you and Olivia." Emily felt her heart fill with love. "We will have that future, Alexander, together." That afternoon, when Emily shared the news with Olivia, the girl beamed. "Does that mean Mr. Harrington is going to get better?" she asked, her eyes shining with hope. Emily smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. "We hope so, sweetheart, but there's still a long road ahead. We need to be patient and give Mr. Harrington all our support." Olivia nodded seriously. "Can I draw him a picture to brighten up his hospital room?" "I think he'd love that," Emily replied, touched by her daughter's thoughtfulness. The days turned into weeks and Alexander's treatment began in full force. There were good days when he felt stronger and more optimistic, and bad days when the pain and side effects left him, exhausted and discouraged. Emily was by his side at all times, offering comfort, encouragement, and unconditional love. She continued to create special clothes for him, adapting them to the ever-changing needs of his body during treatment. One evening, after a particularly difficult day of therapy, Emily found Alexander sitting on the balcony of his room, gazing at the stars. She joined him quietly, wrapping him in a gentle embrace. "How are you feeling?" she asked softly. Alexander sighed, leaning back against her. "Tired but hopeful. You know, Emily, there are moments when I can almost picture myself free from this condition, free to live, to love, to be the man you and Olivia deserve." Emily turned him, gently to face her. "Alexander, you already are the man we deserve. Your strength, your courage, your love. It's all we've ever wanted." They kissed under the moonlight, a kiss full of promises and dreams for the future. As the weeks turned into months, small changes began to appear. Alexander's wounds started to heal more quickly, and his energy gradually improved. Dr. Nakamura was cautiously optimistic, though he always reminded them that there was still a long road ahead. Emily continued to divide her time between caring for Alexander, creating his special clothes, and being there for Olivia. The girl, in turn, had adapted surprisingly well to their new life. She loved her tutoring sessions and spent hours exploring the gardens of the clinic, always returning with exciting stories to tell Alexander. One afternoon, while Emily was working on a new design in her small makeshift studio, Olivia came, running in, holding something in her hands. "Mommy, look! I made this for Mr. Harrington," she exclaimed, showing a necklace made of shells and colorful stones she had collected in the gardens. Emily smiled, admiring her daughter's creation. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. I'm sure he'll love it." Together they took the gift to Alexander, who was resting after a treatment session. His eyes lit up when he saw Olivia, and he listened intently as she explained the meaning behind each piece of the necklace. "See, this pink shell is for love," Olivia explained seriously, "and this blue stone is for healing, and all together they form a circle, like the three of us." Alexander was visibly moved by the gift. With trembling hands, he put on the necklace and hugged Olivia tenderly. "It's the most precious gift I've ever received," he said, his voice choked with emotion. Emily watched the scene with a full heart, feeling that, despite all the challenges, they were truly becoming a family. That night, after Olivia went to sleep, Emily and Alexander walked hand in hand through the clinic gardens. "Emily," Alexander said softly, stopping under a flowering tree, "there's something I want to ask you." Emily's heart raced at the seriousness in his voice. "What is it, Alexander?" He turned to face her, holding both of her hands. "These past few months have been extraordinary. Despite all the challenges, the pain, and the uncertainty, they've been the happiest months of my life. And it's all thanks to you and Olivia." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. "Oh, Alexander, I know we still have a long road ahead," he continued, "but I don't want to wait any longer to ask this." He took a deep breath, his eyes locked on hers. "Emily Thompson, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Emily was speechless for a moment, her heart overflowing with emotion. Then, with tears of joy streaming down her cheeks, she replied, "Yes, Alexander, 1,000 times yes." They kissed passionately, the world around them fading away. When they finally pulled apart, Alexander took a small box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a beautiful diamond ring. "It was my mother's," he explained softly, sliding the ring onto Emily's finger. "She always said it should belong to someone special, someone who brought light into her son's life. And you, Emily, you are that light." Emily admired the ring, her heart overflowing with love. "I love you so much, Alexander. You and Olivia are my entire world." The news of Emily and Alexander's engagement spread quickly through the clinic, bringing a wave of joy and celebration amidst the challenges of treatment. Olivia was overjoyed to learn that Alexander would officially become part of her family, skipping through the halls and telling everyone she met about her new dad. The days that followed were filled with a mix of emotions. As Alexander's treatment continued with its ups and downs, the three of them began making cautious plans for the future. One morning, as Emily helped Alexander get dressed after a particularly difficult therapy session, she noticed something different. "Alexander," she said softly, touching his arm. "Look." He followed her gaze and was stunned. An area of his skin that had once been covered in lesions now showed clear signs of healthy healing. "This is," Alexander began, his voice trembling. with emotion. "Progress," Emily finished, smiling through the tears forming in her eyes. They called Dr. Nakamura. Dr. Nakamura immediately examined Alexander thoroughly. The usually reserved doctor couldn't help but smile. "This is very promising, Mr. Harrington," he said. "It seems your body is responding positively to the treatment. Of course, we still have a long way to go, but this is definitely a good sign." The news brought a new wave of hope for everyone. Alexander seemed more energized, facing the treatment sessions with renewed determination. Emily, on the other hand, immersed herself in her work, creating new designs that not only accommodated Alexander's medical needs, but also celebrated the positive changes in his body. One afternoon, while working in her makeshift studio, Emily was surprised by an unexpected visit. Olivia walked in, holding the hand of a girl Emily recognized as the daughter of another patient at the clinic. "Mom," Olivia said excitedly, "this is my new friend Lily. Can I show her some of your designs?" Emily smiled, delighted to see Olivia, adapting so well. "Of course, sweetheart. As long as Lily promises to keep the special designs a secret, right?" Lily nodded solemnly. "I promise, Mrs. Thompson. Sophie said you make magical clothes." Emily laughed softly. "Well, they're not exactly magical, but we hope they help people feel better." As the girls examined Emily's sketches, making excited comments about colors and patterns, Emily felt a wave of gratitude. Despite all the difficulties, they had found a new family here. Not just among themselves, but also with the other people at the clinic who were going through similar journeys. Later that night, after putting Olivia to bed, Emily found Alexander on the balcony of their room. He was thoughtfully gazing at the stars, the necklace made by Olivia still around his neck. "What are you thinking about?" Emily asked softly, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Alexander sighed, leaning back into her. "I'm thinking about how my life has changed since I met you and Olivia. You know, for years I lived in isolation, convinced that I could never have a normal life, a family." He turned to face her, his eyes shining with emotion. "And now, here I am, engaged to the most incredible woman I've ever known, about to become a father to a wonderful girl, and for the first time in so long, with real hope for a healthy future." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. "Oh, Alexander," she whispered, gently stroking his face, "you've given us so much too. A new beginning, a new home, a complete family." They kissed tenderly, the kiss full of promises for the future. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Alexander's treatment continued with slow but steady progress. His skin began to show visible signs of improvement, and his energy gradually increased. Emily continued to divide her time between caring for Alexander, creating her special clothes, and being a mother to Olivia. The girl, in turn, flourished in her new environment. Her lessons with the tutor were going well, and she had made several friends among the other children at the clinic. One morning during breakfast, Olivia asked a question that caught Emily and Alexander by surprise. "When are you two getting married?" she asked innocently, looking from one to the other. Emily and Alexander exchanged glances, realizing that, with everything going on, they hadn't really discussed the details of the wedding. "Well," Alexander began, taking Emily's hand across the table, "what do you think, darling? Maybe when we finish the treatment here?" Emily smiled, feeling her heart warm. "That sounds perfect. We could do something small, intimate, maybe even right here at the clinic with the people who have become our extended family." Olivia clapped her hands in excitement. "Can I be the maid of honor?" "Of course, mon chéri," Alexander replied, smiling affectionately at her. "We couldn't get married without our special little maid." As they excitedly discussed the wedding plans, Emily felt a wave of happiness wash over her. Despite all the challenges they had faced and would still face, they were building something beautiful together. In the weeks that followed, Emily found herself not only creating clothes for Alexander, but also sketching designs for her own wedding dress and Olivia's maid of honor dress. It was a project that filled her with joy, allowing her to dream about the future they were building. One day, while working in her studio, Emily received a surprise visit from Dr. Nakamura. "Miss Thompson," he said, entering the room with a smile, "I have exciting news." Emily felt her heart race. "What is it, doctor?" "Mr. Harrington's latest tests show significant improvement," he explained. "If progress continues at this rate, I believe we can consider the intensive phase of treatment completed in a few months." Emily was speechless for a moment, tears of joy forming in her eyes. That's wonderful, Doctor. Does Alexander know?" Dr. Nakamura nodded. "Yes, I just informed him. He asked me to come and tell you personally. I think he wanted to give you a moment to process the news before you reunited." Emily thanked the doctor, and as soon as he left, she rushed to Alexander's room. She found him sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at his hands with an expression of awe. "Alexander," she called softly. He looked up at her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Emily," he whispered, "it's really happening. I'm getting better." Emily approached, sitting beside him and wrapping him in a tight embrace. "Yes, my love, you are getting better. We always knew you could." They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other, letting the reality of the news sink in. Finally, Alexander pulled back slightly, looking into Emily's eyes with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Emily," he said, his voice full of emotion, "when I received my diagnosis years ago, I thought my life was over. I isolated myself, convinced I could never have a normal future, a family. But then you came into my life with your kindness, your strength, your unconditional love. You and Olivia gave me a reason to fight, to believe in a better future." Emily felt tears streaming down her cheeks as Alexander continued. "I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. And now with this news, Emily, I want to start planning our future, our life together as a family." Emily smiled through her tears. "Oh, Alexander, I love you so much too. And I can't wait to build that life with you." They kissed passionately, the kiss full of promises and dreams for the future. When they pulled apart, Alexander took Emily's hands in his. "What do you think about getting married here at the clinic before we return to New York?" he asked. "We could have a small, intimate ceremony with the people who have become our family here." Emily nodded enthusiastically. "That would be perfect. And when we return to New York, we can have a bigger reception to celebrate with all our friends and family." They spent the rest of the afternoon making plans, dreaming about their future together. Emily felt as if she were floating, her heart overflowing with love and happiness. That night, as she tucked Olivia into bed, Emily shared the good news with her daughter. "So Daddy Alexander is going to get better?" Olivia asked, her eyes shining with hope. Emily smiled, still marveling at how easily Olivia had accepted Alexander as her father. "Yes, sweetheart, he's getting better every day. And you know what? We're going to get married here at the clinic before we go back home." Olivia let out a little squeal of joy. "Can I help plan it, please, Mommy?" "Of course you can, mon chéri," Emily laughed, kissing her daughter's forehead. "We couldn't do it without you." As she turned off the lights in Olivia's room, Emily felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. The journey had been long and at times difficult, but every challenge had brought them closer. Now, with the promise of a bright future ahead, she could hardly wait to see what life had in store for their little family. With her heart full of love and hope, Emily headed to her own room, eager to start preparing for the wedding and the new life that awaited them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, of course, but together, she, Alexander, and Olivia, they could face anything. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Between Alexander's treatment sessions, wedding preparations, and the daily care of Olivia, Emily barely had time to breathe. Yet she felt more alive and happier than she had ever imagined possible. One sunny morning, as she worked on her wedding dress in the makeshift studio, Emily was surprised by a soft knock at the door. It was Lily, Olivia's friend, looking nervous and hesitant. "Mrs. Thompson," the girl began timidly, "can I talk to you for a minute?" Emily smiled gently, setting aside the fabric she was working on. "Of course, Lily. What's on your mind?" Lily stepped into the room, wringing her hands anxiously. "It's just, my mum is sick too, like Mr. Harrington, and I was wondering, could you make special clothes for her as well?" Emily's heart melted at the girl's request. She knelt down to meet Lily at eye level. "Sweetheart, I would be honored to help. Your mom. How about we talk to her and see what we can do?" Lily's eyes lit up with hope. "Really? Oh, thank you, Mrs. Thompson." That afternoon, Emily met with Lily's mother, a kind woman named Mary who was suffering from a condition similar to Alexander's. As they discussed Mary's specific needs, Emily felt an idea begin to take shape in her mind. Later, when she shared her thoughts with Alexander, he listened with growing enthusiasm. "Emily," he said, his eyes shining, "that's brilliant. You could help so many people." Emily nodded, feeling excited about the possibilities. "I've been thinking, what if when we returned to New York, I started a clothing line specifically designed for people with medical conditions like yours? We could combine fashion and functionality, helping people feel beautiful and comfortable, no matter what they're facing." Alexander pulled her into a tight hug. "My love, that's a wonderful idea. And I want to support you in every way. In fact," he paused, seeming to think for a moment, "how about we make this a joint project? We could use my resources and connections to make this a reality on a larger scale." Emily felt tears of happiness forming in her eyes. "Alexander, that would be amazing. We could really make a difference in people's lives." In the days that followed, between wedding preparations and Alexander's treatment sessions, Emily began working on designs for others at the clinic. Each piece was carefully tailored to the individual's specific needs, combining comfort, functionality, and style. The work brought a new energy to Emily, and she often stayed up late into the night, sketching new designs and experimenting with different fabrics. Alexander supported her unconditionally, often staying up with her, offering ideas and encouragement. One night, as they worked together in the studio, Olivia entered quietly, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mom? Dad?" she called softly. Emily and Alexander turned, surprised. It was the first time Olivia had called Alexander Dad, directly to him. "What is it, mon chéri?" Alexander asked, his voice choked with emotion. Olivia approached, climbing onto Alexander's lap. "I had a dream. We were all in a big house in New York and you were making beautiful clothes for people all over the world, Mum. And you, Dad, were healthy and happy." Emily and Alexander exchanged emotional glances. "That sounds like a wonderful dream, sweetheart," Emily said softly. "It's not just a dream," Alexander added, hugging Olivia. "It's our future." In the days leading up to the wedding, the clinic was abuzz. Patients, doctors, and staff all wanted to help in some way. Mary, Lily's mother, offered to make Emily's bouquet with flowers from the clinic's garden. Dr. Nakamura surprised everyone by revealing that he was a certified justice of the peace and could officiate the ceremony. On the eve of the big day, Emily was in her room, making final adjustments to her dress, when she heard a knock at the door. It was Mrs. Thompson, who had flown in from New York for the occasion. "Miss Thompson, Emily," the housekeeper began, seeming a bit uncomfortable, "I wanted to give you something, a tradition of the Harrington family." She held out a small velvet box. When Emily opened it, she found a delicate pearl necklace. "It belonged to Mr. Harrington's mother," Mrs. Thompson explained. "She always said it should be worn by the woman who brought light back into her son's life. And you, Emily, have done just that." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm honored, thank you.